by doing it, you learn what's possible. And that is years and years and years and years of doing gets you there.
Are you ready? All right, let's go.
Manufacturing is sexy. Sounds crazy? Just wait. I'm Z Holly, host of The Art of Manufacturing. Your behind-the-scenes look at how people who make stuff are trying to make it in their industries. If you've ever wondered how to build a brand, a business, or just a better mousetrap, tune in and enjoy. This week, we're talking with Jeni Britton Bauer, the founder and CEO of Jeni Splendid Ice Creams. If you've ever tasted her award-winning flavors like orange blossom buttermilk or goat cheese with red cherries, you're probably a fan. She's been innovating ever since she started 21 years ago. I was curious about how she develops her inventive flavors and what it takes to make top-quality ice cream at scale. And it turns out there's a lot more art and science and logistics than I ever imagined. We talk about the importance of just rolling up your sleeves and diving in order to learn quickly and evolve your product. And she shares her greatest challenges, from product recalls and regulations to angry consumers blaming her for buying up all the state's strawberries, and what she did about it. We hear about that and a whole lot more on this week's episode of The Art of Manufacturing.
I'm 43 years old, and I started making ice cream when I was 21 and a half. So that's half my life ago. I'm really seriously made out of ice cream. But back then I was studying art, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And when you study art, everybody asks you what you're going to actually do. So so it was something that was on my mind all the time because of that. Which I don't think is fair, actually, to when you're studying art, because I think actually art is a wonderful thing to study to go on and do many other things. But I was studying art, and I wanted to be maybe a pastry chef. I was thinking about that. I was working at a pastry company. And then my third thing that I wanted to do was become a perfumer. I really am very connected to my sense of smell, and was actually trying to incorporate that into art a little bit then.
Huh.
And what
How
I
would
ended
you
up
do that?
Well, I don't know, but I saw an exhibition at the Wexner Center, which is our museum in Columbus, involving these giant vases filled with scent. And I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. There's some art, you can build scent and scent with the memory associations, and it just hits your brain in that way, and it transports you, and that is very similar to art. And we use food that way too, to sort of time travel in a way sometimes. And scent, food is almost all scent, right? Everything you don't taste on your tongue, which is those 5 things, is in your nose. And so I was thinking about that. And I was 21 years old, so I was very young, but in a creative time. And I started using scent, or using essential oils and different scents to infuse ice cream with scent. And just store-bought ice cream. And then I would serve it at parties, and everybody would go crazy. And 6 months later, I walked out of my last art class when a model walked in that I always had trouble drawing. She was really beautiful and very, very thin and angular. And I just really like drawing on large paper, round, with my whole body. And I just didn't want to sit there for 3 hours and draw this woman who I still see all the time, actually. And I walked out, left all of my materials there, and in fact left my portfolio even. It was portfolio week. Really? And went home, made ice cream. And within a few months, I had my first business, and it was in 1996. And then I started my journey. I'm really, really learning about ice cream.
Did you ever tell the model that she was the reason
I haven't,
you started
but
ice cream company?
I always feel like someday I will, that, it had something to do with her, and I haven't told her yet. Yeah,
because you're too thin.
Yeah, and she really is beautiful, but I just enjoy, I just didn't enjoy drawing, and because I wasn't good at it is why.
I want to ask you in a bit about kind of how the company was birthed, but first I want to learn more about, how do you make ice cream? What is the actual process of making ice cream?
Well, there are 2 sort of ways of making ice cream. Most of the sort of makers of ice cream will buy an ice cream base, whether it's a powdered base that you add milk to and heat a little bit, and then you can flavor, or you can buy a liquid base from almost every dairy in America down the street or in your area, and you can infuse it with flavor, and you can add flavor, and then you freeze it in your kitchen, and it's awesome.
And what's in the base? What makes it?
The base is various things, but it's milk, cream, sugar, and then some kinds of stabilizers. Usually there's some kind of corn syrup in there. But, they all come in different shapes and sizes now. When I first started, there weren't a lot of all natural ones, but now you're starting to see some all natural ones. And there's really nothing wrong with stabilizers. We don't use them at Jenis because I don't like them, but they almost always have that in them. And anyway, it makes it very easy for you to make ice cream in some ways because all you have to do is add a flavoring or another, a little bit of strawberries. But the problem with that method, the way that I see it, is that you don't get the opportunity to really think about how best do I make this strawberry ice cream taste like strawberries and cream, because the more strawberries you add, fresh strawberries from maybe your local farms or whatever, the more icy you're going to make the ice cream because ice cream or strawberries and lots of other ingredients have lots of water in them, and water is your enemy in ice cream making. So you're very limited, I found, in that method of when you add cocoa powder, chocolate, you can use the best chocolate in the entire world, but you can't add much of it to a standard ice cream base or with a standard, that kind of thinking about ice cream because cocoa dries out the ice cream. It's the opposite problem with strawberries, and then you can't scoop it, It's actually a challenge. So our dark chocolate ice cream is one of the most challenging flavors we make. It's the simplest flavor, but it's challenging because the more chocolate you add to it, and it's so much chocolate that it almost, we actually had to add more cream to it in order to get it above the cream threshold so we could call it ice cream by the federal definition standard of ice cream. But anyway, for years I was having the same problem. I couldn't scoop it, I couldn't whatever, but I just had to work out that recipe. So the other way of making ice cream, the way that we make ice cream, and not many people in the United States do, I'm not sure that anyone else does exactly like we do, is by starting with raw milk and really wanting to take that milk apart, put it back together as ice cream. We approach it more like a cheesemaker makes cheese. So instead of using a stabilizer to make the ice cream bouncy and thicker and sort of American ice cream, and to give that body and texture to the ice cream, we work with the power of milk proteins. And also it means that we don't have to work with egg yolks either, which I love sometimes, but I don't always love the flavor. And I think they add a little bit of grittiness to the ice cream. So I don't have to use that, but I've figured out a way that milk proteins, one of the milk proteins in milk, there are a couple, can be sort of denatured by heat to bind water and to build body and texture in the ice cream. And so from there, we do all of this by sourcing them, by combining the milk from the Ohio countryside from 17 different dairy farms. And it all converges right there at the dairy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a wonderful process. And every one of our ice creams, it's extraordinarily complex. I can't even begin to tell you how, I'm doing this here, but it is amazing. But each one of our recipes, as it needs to be, is a different recipe. I mean, not every single one of our ice creams, because some of them are sort of beautiful cream bases, and those will be sort of one category, and chocolate bases. But we actually build ice creams as necessary to support the flavor, but also supporting body and texture of the ice cream. Body and texture is actually the sort of what I think of as like the last room of the house if you're an ice cream maker. Like, it's the nerdy place to be, but it's the most fun for me, because if you really want to get great flavor and finish, you've got to understand the body and texture, and that's all chemistry. Flavor, texture, body, and finish, the four facets of ice cream. The flavor and the finish are the sort of fun and easy part. If you start with good ingredients, it's going to taste good, and the finish will be good.
What's the finish?
Finish is what it leaves out. So flavor is taste and scent that's in your mouth and your nose. But the finish is kind of what you're left with 2 minutes after you're done with your ice cream.
It is still a flavor, but it's after.
Yeah, it's how it sort of develops, and then how when you're done with it, you can still see maybe like grass pastured milk is really has a beautiful finish. And you don't quite get there until after the brighter flavor is, I think, kind of dissolve into your head. And then you kind of get there later. Or, a really good chocolate will go on for miles. The finish of that will go on for miles. It's part of flavor, but it's sort of how it lingers and how long it lingers is the finish. And then body and texture are those two in between. And flavor and finish is pretty easy to achieve, but then you get iciness, or what we call short, which is like a shortbread cookie, kind of brittle ice cream, or all of these different textural and body issues that you can get in ice cream. And so that's what we're working out over in Ohio.
How many flavors do you have right now?
Right now we have about 26 flavors in stores. There's probably 30 flavors that we're making right now, plus ones we're getting ready for next month, Do you do seasonal? We do. So throughout the year we'll have 3 or 4 limited edition collections, and then in between, interspersed between those collections are our seasonal collections. We call them like perennial collections. They come back sort of every year. Flavors that are, things like chocolate peppermint in the holiday time, and roasted strawberry buttermilk in the summer.
Your flavors are so inventive, and I'm curious if you can explain a little bit about how do you create the flavors? First, how do you even imagine it? And then how do you turn that into, maybe you can have an example of turning it into the actual ice cream.
Well, funny too, because I'm in a very, I would say, kind of conservative flavor phase, much more nuanced phase of my ice cream making actually at this point in my career. You know, in the early days, I mean, I was experimenting with everything. And I got to a point, you know, because I started in an indoor public market and I was just churning everything into ice cream, all the spices, I mean, even meats and even fish sometimes. But I got to a point where I felt like, okay, I have to ask myself this question. Just because it's not bad, because I mean, almost nothing is bad in ice cream.
No,
you can put smoked salmon in ice cream, it's remarkably not bad. But just because it's remarkably not bad does not make it good. And so that sort of shifted my way of thinking about it. So for instance, you know, it's easy to want to put rose petal into roasted strawberry buttermilk ice cream, and it is really beautiful. It's a beautiful flavor together, and I did that for a while. But we go through all of this immense trouble and process to work with Mike Hirsch, our farmer, who we've worked with for years and years, to grow these strawberries, to grow very specific strawberries for us that literally have a 1.5 day shelf life max. And they're very small and they don't contain a lot of water, but they're very high in flavor. They're all bright red, including last year, the leaves on them were red. The tops of them were red. So why wouldn't we just leave that be, you know, and highlight it with a little bit of buttermilk? Because buttermilk, when we add that to cream, actually draws out some of that tartness from the strawberries. So it highlights that and draws that out and doesn't dull it the way that cream does a little bit. So coaxing flavor that way to me is really, really beautiful. And basil is another thing that goes right with strawberries. But like for us, it's like we're in this place right now where we're like, we should not do that to the strawberries. You know what I mean? It's really fun to think about flavors and all the great stories you can tell and combining flavors together. But it's also really beautiful to start with truly remarkable ingredients and let them shine. Mm-hmm. And it takes like a little bit of a step back, you know, a little bit to do that, to be able to do that.
So what's your favorite?
My favorite flavor, and it has been for 20 years. I've made it for that long. It's been tweaked over the years, but it's roughly the same, is our lemon buttermilk frozen yogurt. And it's
yes,
long before frozen yogurt, you know, had a resurgence. I was making this flavor in our market with fresh squeezed lemon juice, yogurt, and cream. And it's just beautiful. But then, you know, the new froyo started up, and, you know, it's the opposite of kind of how we're doing it. I mean, we're doing it with fresh yogurt. Actually, at this point, it's fresh yogurt from biodynamically raised, you know, cows. And
what does biodynamically raised cows mean?
Well, I'll tell you what it means to me is that it's really darn good yogurt, and the people who make it have a lot of respect for bringing out the flavor of yogurt. And they're just trying to make the best yogurt they can. And their standards of farming are very high. I always joke that there are maybe unicorns on the farm or something, but no, they really do. I mean, there is something that has to do with astrology, and it's like above organic, but truly the yogurt is very tart. It's just really beautiful, really good yogurts from Pennsylvania. It's 7 Stars yogurt, actually, if you're familiar with that brand. They're amazing. But and a little bit of cultured buttermilk will actually thicken the cream, as well as the lemon juice does. And so we get this incredible body and texture in this ice cream. We do lots of flavors in our yogurts, but they're actually all my favorites. But our lemon yogurt is my favorite. Right now, we've got orange blossom for a little bit longer, and that'll be back again in peak summer. And it's really beautiful, too. So if you see that in the store, get it, because we never make very much of that at one time.
So what was the hardest flavor to develop?
It was probably chocolate, honestly. It was probably chocolate. Or, you know, it's like the easy flavors, right? Because even like our salty caramel, which we've been making since 1996. I mean, in Ohio, when I was making that, people would drive in from all of the surrounding states to get it. And it was the flavor that put me on the map. But we're talking about in the mid-90s and early 2000s. And, you know, long before it became such a big trend across America. But this flavor is so complex. And it's another one of those flavors, like, don't mess with it, you know? I actually worked at a French bakery, and this French-speaking chef told me, like, where he was from, that the caramel was salty. And I had just had a Scandinavian salted licorice. And so I thought, oh, it's like salty like that. I knew nothing. I hadn't traveled at that time. I was very young. So I immediately started making that when I started my company. And I would make the caramel by caramelizing sugar on the stove. And then I would add a little extra sea salt because like trying to make it like what it was like in France. I really thought I was mimicking like what was happening in France. And I was like traveling in my imagination. But it's not true. Actually, in France, there's a distinction between a burnt sugar just sauce or, you know, whatever, and then what is like a salted butter caramel. And that is like what we think of it in America as caramel, right? It's like I say caramel and caramel interchangeably. All caramel in America has vanilla and sea salt in it, like it all does. Like Werther's Original, the candy, all of it does. And then, you know, the burnt sugar is a different thing. I guess now. But I mean, that was just kind of how we think of caramel. So anyway, I just was adding a little bit more salt to an American like idea of caramel, and it like went crazy. But caramel is a weird flavor because you cannot synthesize it in a lab. So you can synthesize a vanilla and actually win a contest against a real vanilla bean.
Whoa.
You cannot get that in caramel. So if you have a caramel flavoring and you smell it, to me, it smells like what I think of as a gas station latte, like a really cheap latte. Because what it happens is they put too much of the sort of butter aspect in it, too much hazelnut, too much coffee, and they try to create something that we think of as caramel, but it's not. So caramel is one thing, it's caramelized. But that's dangerous to do. Sugar burns at almost 400 degrees, and so we're caramelizing it is toasting it and burning little pieces of it. And we do that in a kettle, copper kettle over fire in my kitchen, one batch at a time, and then dump, not frozen, but very cold cream into it to stop the cooking, and it spatters everywhere.
That's scary.
We've got about a 2-second window when it's perfect, and anything below that, and it just tastes like salt water, and anything above that, it starts to lose bitterness or lose sweetness and turn bitter. And so caramel it's such one of those simple flavors, but it is an absolute labor of love. And over the years, I've been making this for more than 20 years now, and we're just in the last couple of years, I think, getting it to the place where we feel like we are consistent about it. Almost like every batch will be so similar that you can't tell batches from batches. But for most of my career, each batch was kind of markedly different.
Wow. But you're still doing it in the kitchen just by hand.
There's no other way to do it. There's
Really?
no other way that you can do it.
That's so hard to believe that
Yeah.
it can't be automated.
I mean, I think that you can get like a caramelizing machine that can like caramelize milk, and I haven't explored that yet because, I think you can to make like something like dulce de leche, and so I'd love to explore that at some point, but, like do that in kind of larger batches and just basically caramelize the entire ice cream. But in terms of caramelizing sugar as the main flavoring of this ingredient or of this ice cream, that's why it's so special, though. I mean, it is. It's just, and it's also why others don't do that. And when you get caramel from other, especially, the bigger brands or whatever, they can't do it.
Yeah. So tell me about the location where you're doing this in Columbus.
Well, yeah, and like kind of all over Ohio, actually.
Yeah. So tell me about
it takes all of Ohio to make this amazing ice cream.
So tell me about your supply chain.
Well, it starts with the dairies, of course, and that's been a lifelong pursuit of mine. I thought being in Ohio, I mean, I literally drive by cows on the way home right now. I mean, it's an Ohio State thing. It's not like we have actual farms in the city, but this is an Ohio State farm that I drive by. We're close to farms, and so I felt like this is a perfect thing to do for a career, is to get into ice cream because that is like what we're surrounded by. I mean, Ohio is part of that sort of Northeast dairy thing that we've got going on there. Is the perfect place to grow cows and dairy and to make dairy. So feeling that would be very easy to do. It is not. So I started ice cream. It is not at all easy to do. I thought I could just go up to a dairy farm and be like, just can I make ice cream with your dairy? It's so heavily regulated, and they're all consolidated, into these giant, dairies. And it's great. It's all food safety. Everybody did this because they needed to, but all of the smaller dairies are gone, and you just have no real say in where your milk comes from now. I mean, and I know so many farmers, and I will always advocate for them. They're all just amazing. We have so many amazing farmers in Ohio, but it's this system that's really complicated. And so we've been working. One of the reasons that we love growing our company is because we can continue to build demand for this grass-pastured cream and milk that we have worked so hard just to get access to. And when I say access, I don't mean that the farmers don't want to sell it to us. I just mean that we have to fill up a whole tanker truck because they have to make a route of it now.
Really?
So that's the only way you get access to this stuff is to be able to use a 10,000-gallon tanker truck full of it pretty much every week. And we're even far too small to do that yet. So we do get all 100% grass-pastured milk, and we share it with another company. But yeah, it's a complex situation. So which is awesome because I feel like we can do it. We just have to keep really focused on that, which we are.
What did you do before you had this system in place?
Well, I went in and out of conventional and organic and conventional and grass-fed and all the different options that I had. But this is part of being an entrepreneur. You walk through every single door. You hunt down every opportunity you can get. And so through some connections at Ohio State, I met up with, I've met up with a couple different people who had started dairies over the last, 10 to 15 years. And now a couple of them are gone. One of them still exists. It's wonderful. But, we were working with them. And then through that, also building demand for not for growing better quality milk, but for separating that out and making it available to people.
I want to come visit. What does the factory look like?
Oh, you should.
And how big is it? And how many people?
So if you think about our factory sort of thing, we don't really have a factory, but we have we have production kitchens. We actually have a bakery. We have a production kitchen where we are making tons of just all of the stuff that we then we take right to the dairy, which is sort of like a factory. It's like a big room with these incredible ice cream machines in it, and that's it. And then they've got silos of the milk that just came in from the farmers like that day, and then they'll mix it with our roasted strawberries that we have been working on in our kitchens, and then out comes this incredible ice cream. I mean, we pasteurize there at a certain temperature, and that's what really makes the difference in body and texture.
So you pasteurize the milk.
It starts. I mean, it's raw. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and we only pasteurize once because you don't get the same functionality of the proteins, and if you're pasteurizing multiple times, and so it's a pretty incredible and tight system that we have.
So normally, when you are buy milk off the shelf, you're drinking milk. Is that pasteurized multiple times?
No, that's usually pasteurized once. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And
but then if you want to make ice cream out of that, you've got to pasteurize it again. By law, you have to pasteurize. And anytime you add something to cream, milk, sugar, you have to pasteurize it because you're adding just for food safety reasons.
Have you had any challenges with the whole regulatory environment? And you had a recall at some point, didn't you?
We did. We had a recall 2 years ago. Yeah. Well, one of the main challenges is that, first of all, everybody's got their heart in the right place and everybody wants it all to work out. But when you're trying to do something new in food, just like any other industry, when you want to do something new, and this is something I didn't quite realize before the recall, you have to also innovate in safety and in every other area because you have to figure out your own system because ultimately you're responsible for all of it as an entrepreneur and as a business. But you can't follow the same regulations and rules that exist before you because they exist because everybody knows the system and you've just broken the system. You've just done something else, like brought an entire field of strawberries into a kitchen where you make ice cream and strawberries are covered in dirt and dirt is where listeria hides. I mean, actually listeria is in air and everywhere else too. So you've got to understand all of the hazards or the possible hazards. And that's tough for anyone in any business, but that's the game of the good food movement right now is how do we make really, really, really good food? I talked to a charcuterie maker in Brooklyn who wants to go back to the 1890s methods, but how are you going to do that now? And what are you going to do to make sure that your safety is up to those standards? Because the regulatory world or the food safety inspectors, they won't know. They'll know how to do it the other way. And so it's up to you to help build the new processes that we can then share.
So you've been a real trailblazer in that. What was the process for changing? Did you have regulations changed or created, or how did that work?
No, we haven't. We haven't changed any of that. What we've done is we fit our quality and what we are here to do into the system, but with a level of safety and our own, I guess, regulations on ourselves, our own processes, I guess, far exceed what is expected of us. I mean, what's expected of us is safety. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's once you sort of get to that place, then you're like, okay, great. So we now don't bring strawberries into our kitchen. We send them to a partner who does all of the washing. And this is true of any produce. We get multiple items of produce, dozens into our kitchen every season. Or every, summer season. Those will go to an offsite processor or, where they'll wash it up and get it ready for us. And then we can bring it to our kitchen and roast it. So it doesn't get, so we're not bringing in those dirty strawberries or dirty pumpkins or whatever, and dirt covered, from the farms, which we were always very proud of, actually. But so we've kind of fit our system into that and then gone way above it. So we test every single batch, knowing that we are not just using a paste that's been sanitized in some way or whatever to make a strawberry ice cream, but we're actually using real strawberries or whatever. You can apply this to any one of our flavors. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we've done it in the safest way possible and then to test and test and test what we're doing so that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that, or as much as close as we can get, that what we're doing is safe, because we don't want to have to worry about that anymore. We want to worry about making incredible ice cream.
The regulations are really just about the testing, or are there certain processes you need to follow?
There are a lot of processes, but it's not even that. They want to see that you know what you're doing, and it's very complex because your state, for other food makers out there, your state authorities again know kind of what they know. And they're awesome. They're great people. They're easy to work with. We built our kitchen with them. We got their blessing on every. They were there every month. It's a rigorous sort of schedule that you're on, and inspections and so on. But they don't know how to do what you're doing, especially if you're doing something new in food. And so that's what you have to take responsibility for. And how you do that, you just, they'll be happy if you're going above everything that they ask for. And that's exactly what if we want to really have this conversation about what is good food, good food in America, and how does that go into the future, it has to start there.
You're listening to The Art of Manufacturing. Join the conversation on social at We Make It in LA and our Facebook group, makeitinla.org/community. We'll be right back after this break. I want to give a shout out to Happily, a nationwide network of the best freelance event producers, coordinators, and assistants. They can take on the biggest or smallest of projects. They're a sponsor of the Make It monthly talks, and I've personally worked with the team on everything from high-level strategy to nitty-gritty on-site logistics, and they're great. If your company is looking for long-term or last-minute support on events, go to makeitinla.org/happily, and you'll get a 30% discount on your first 6 months of membership in 2017. We're speaking with Jeni Britton Bauer, the founder and CEO of Jenis Splendid Ice Creams. She's sharing the ups and downs of scaling her business, from building partnerships with farmers and suppliers to producing and distributing the product. So tell me a little bit about how you ended up growing your business, because first you're just cooking up batches for friends, testing it out.
Yeah, and I started in an indoor public market, and I've had 2 businesses in that market. So my first business was like my practice business. I called it Scream, and it was there from 1996 to 2000. And I tell young aspiring entrepreneurs these stories all the time, because I feel like that's the thing we're kind of missing in business right now. People sort of are, looking for funding and all of the sexy stuff or whatever, but forget the part of just start. Just start and work your ass off. Just get in it and do it, and because there's so much you still have to learn. And so I did that. We started in the market. I didn't know anything about it, but I just started making ice cream every day out of the things that I found there. And in doing so, I learned everything I know almost today. The foundation for everything I know. I learned about seasonality of ingredients. I learned how the ingredients grow directly from the people who grow them. I learned about cheese from the cheesemonger there and cheesemakers who would come visit. I learned about wine from winemakers that would come visit the wine shop, and the wine guy there who was like super smart about all of that, and spices and where spices came from the spice lady of the market, right? I learned about, every meats, everything in the market. I learned about Indian flavors from the Indian family there, Palestinian flavors from the Palestinian, Polish, just by wandering the market and talking and listening. But I learned also about community, and that a rising tide lifts all ships, and that we support each other. And when we do, we all benefit. That place is still my sort of home. In a way, I always feel like that's my sort of home as an entrepreneur and my family and whatever. But it was your garage. Yeah, it really was. And it actually was about the size of a garage, that space. So I opened there again in 2002. I closed in 2000, opened as Jenis in 2002. And what I did at Jenis that was different from Scream is that at Scream I just made whatever I wanted to all the time. So people would come in and fall in love with like salty caramel or basil and honey and pine nut or whatever. And like they would come back and bring 25 of their friends a week later, and I wouldn't have it. And I thought that was very cool and very artistic of me, because I come from the art place where it's like everything changes all the time. And it wasn't until I closed Scream and I was at a coffee shop with like a Vogue magazine and $5 in my pocket, and I was going to spend the whole morning reading Vogue, eating this scone that I had been craving, and drinking a coffee. But when I got up finally in line to the counter, they were out of the scone, and I was like stunned, because it was like my whole morning. It was supposed to be like this orange scone that I loved. And I was, as I walked out, and I remember this so clearly, it was in like 1990, or it must have been 2000 or 2001. I walked out of the door of that coffee shop, And it hit me like a ton of bricks that is exactly what I did to every single one of my customers at Scream. And so from that moment on, I started scribbling, another business plan together. And it was just like I was hooked back again. I realized I needed to get back into it.
Maybe the name Scream was appropriate.
I know, right? But so I started Jenis, and only this time I had 2 different dipping cabinets, the ice cream cabinets. One of them was for my seasonal flavors and whatever I was, on whatever whim I was on at the moment. And then one of them was for what I then called signature flavors. And I would do limited edition collections. I mean, at the time, like nobody, I don't know if you remember back then, but like nobody was doing signature collections. Like Haagen-Dazs might have a holiday flavor that they came out with, or, your local place might do peach ice cream once, a year or something like that. But it wasn't like collections of ice cream. Nobody was thinking about ice cream in that way. So I could explore every single day. But I knew that most of you were probably there for salty caramel or wild berry lavender or one of the flavors that I was making that everybody loved. And so I made sure and I vowed that at Jenis we would never run out of those flavors, and we don't. And that's like kind of our thing now. And so then we have freedom to do whatever we want on the other side.
So you've had a lot of success and renown for what you've been doing. Tell us a little bit about that path, and when did you feel like, wow, now I'm really in the big leagues here?
Well, I don't know if I ever really felt like that. I think that, most of my life, I have spent, 21 and a half years as an entrepreneur and making ice cream. I've spent, behind the counter, head down doing the work. And what happens when you really get into it like that and you do it every single day. And now, with Instagram and everything seems like it's always just fun. I mean, it really looks beautiful. Like, everything we're doing is like, leaping and bounding through strawberry fields every day or whatever. But like, try taking the tops off of 2,000 strawberries. I mean, it's a lot. That's what most of my life has actually looked like. It's just been head down to the work. And what happens when you're doing that is that you learn all of the things you're doing wrong and what you can do better. And you get really, really focused on that every single day. You start to think like, okay, I can't do this right now, whatever it is, grass pastured milk or, whatever, get on somebody's pasteurizer to really look at milk proteins deeper or whatever. But like, I know this can work. And when I get the resources to do that, I will do that tomorrow or a year from now or 10 years from now. So you by doing it, you learn what's possible. And that is years and years and years and years of doing gets you there. You don't get that from standing on the sidelines or from afar or from a marketing plan or a business plan or copying somebody else's business and just doing it. You know what I mean? You really have to get in there and get your hands dirty. And so I feel like that's where I've been almost most of my life. And then the other part is service. I mean, I absolutely, I think service is an incredible honor. It's a way of like lifting up communities. I love getting behind my counter and talking about ice cream. And I know how ice cream brings people together, giving people tastes of ice cream, moving families through the line and like kind of sending them off into the world with their ice cream cones. I mean, it's like the best experience ever. So those 2 things are the things I've been focused on almost my entire life.
You talk about taking the tops off the strawberries, all that. It's making it sound very manual. Like how many employees do you have? And have you implemented any tools or any automation or anything to make that process easier that you didn't have before?
You're right. It can take hundreds of people to bring one flavor to life. And we say this all the time, but it's really true. I mean, whether it's how our vanilla bean grower in Uganda is picking the vanilla beans and drying them, or of course the farmers that grow and then, the teenagers that come in and pick our strawberries.
Those aren't employees of yours though, right?
No, but just like thinking about everyone that it takes to bring an ice cream to life. And then by the time it gets to our partner who's now taking the tops off the strawberries for us, and then when it gets to our kitchen, the team that's roasting those strawberries with sugar and pureeing them, to then the dairy team that's, putting it together with the dairy that just came off the farm. There are 17 farms that we work with, and there are families that live on those farms, and it's a beautiful process to see. And so it's many people involved in bringing it to life. And the opposite kind of business is, you buy a strawberry paste on Amazon or like some place, and they drop it off, and then you turn it into ice cream, and you really have no connection with the entire network of people who brought that to life. And that's not our business. We always want to be, just to have a direct connection with everybody.
How do you decide what to outsource to other companies?
And the way you decide that is everything you can. And what I do is I think of a difference between like a co-packer who you could say like, I have a family, salad dressing recipe. And so I need to make it shelf stable. So here you go. And like, they're experts at doing that. Like, we're the experts, right? So if I can have somebody who's a great candy maker in my neighborhood. Literally in my neighborhood, there's a nut company called Crema Nut Company, and they're awesome, and they've been there forever and ever and ever. And they make their own version of brittle. They've got equipment to do that. So I can give them my almond brittle recipe, and I can teach them how to make my recipe, but they can do it better than I can. They should do it. Because that makes me allowed to focus or able to focus on the other thing that I do that nobody else can do, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody can take the tops off of strawberries or take the kernel, I mean, you don't know how hard it is to take the kernels off of 150,000 ears of corn. They make it's hilarious. So
what is
if
the
somebody
corn for?
can do this for our sweet corn ice cream every August, we've done it for years and years. But if somebody has that equipment, they should put it to work as many hours as they can every day. And we don't need to buy that equipment and have it on site because it doesn't make any sense unless we want to go into the corn processing business, which we don't. So our job in many ways is to be a connector, and to understand the standards that we're doing, and then understand it to the point where like we can teach others how to do it. I mean, even at our dairy, we're down there making the ice cream with them. Or it's actually up, it's not down. But, we actually have equipment in their production plants that we can go in and we know how to use, and we work with their people so that it's a very different way of making ice cream than what they're used to. So we go up and show them how. And
then how about going the other direction, the distribution? What does that look like?
Well, we have a fleet of trucks, which I think is just like awesome. We have an amazing fulfillment team and logistics team. And, part of making really great ice creams, especially the way that we do without using stabilizers and those kinds of ingredients, means we have to be very, very good at logistics. We are bodyguards of our ice cream. We are taking it like everywhere we take it. We want it to be absolutely frozen. It cannot melt all the way or it's broken, or it can't even melt, halfway or it's broken. So we've got to very carefully get it everywhere it needs to go. We're really, really good at that now, which I just think is the most amazing thing ever. And I love to nerd out about it and go hang out with our logistics people because they're so good at what they do. And nobody else could do that for us, really. I mean, we do work with a couple of distributors for some of our pints in various areas of the country. But, this is a very specific kind of distribution, and that's important to us how we do it. I mean, even like the way that we serve our ice cream. I was just at an event last night, and just how our team understands how to move our little mini containers of ice creams. They're like sort of portable, edible, just whatever, single serving containers. How they understand how to move them through is pretty great too, because we want to keep them very frozen and not let them melt at all. And they just understand how to keep those like flowing. But that's part of that, from our kitchen to the customer's mouth,
And you ship through your stores, through retail, or direct to consumer?
All of them.
Yeah. And how did that evolve over the years?
We started our website in 2004. And funny, I started because we were going to be on the Food Network. Actually, originally I called Florence Fabricant at the New York Times. And I was like, we're doing this really amazing ice cream out in Ohio, and you probably should be interested in it. Like, it's really great. And she was like, well, can you get it in New York? And I was like, no, you can't. And she was like, well, call me when you can. And I was like, okay, all right, we'll do that. So we're like, okay, great, we got to have a website. And then the Food Network called, and they were going to do this thing. So they came out and filmed or whatever, and we're like, all right, we got 6 months to get a website that we can ship because it's going to be huge. Everybody, this is what every entrepreneur thinks in the beginning, right? Everybody's going to like just be whatever. And so finally we got on the Food Network, and we had a website up like that day. It was just press the button, ready to go. We actually were like, how many orders are you ready to get? Like 10,000? We couldn't even make 10,000 pints of ice cream at the time. So we were like, we put like a cap of like 50, or I don't know what it was, maybe 500 or something.
Oh my
like
God,
that.
I remember our first company is like, oh my God, what if nobody buys this product? Oh my God, what if everybody buys the product?
Right. Well, of course we thought everybody was. I think we capped it at like 500, but we put like a sort of disclaimer or something there that was like, it could take a couple of weeks to ship out or something like that, because I don't know how long it was going to take us to do it. But
that's so cute.
We got one order. But that order was a very important one, and from there it grew rapidly. We started shipping to New York and LA like right away, all over. It was just huge, and so over the last 10, 15 years, those two have been our biggest shipping destinations, but it's also filled in all over America. I mean, our online store is our biggest store by a long shot, and fastest growing still to this day. So that's one of the reasons actually that we actually are out here in LA, is because we knew that we had this incredible fan base out here, and getting out and being able to have face-to-face, service with our customers, great, because these people have never actually been to a Jenis Ice Creams. So it's been a dream for a long time. And now we're here.
I think when you started, there weren't that many. I lived in Boston at the time that you started, and in Boston there were some real artisanal kind of ice creams. I think that was a unique area that people appreciated it, but the rest of the country, grew up in LA, you basically go to the thrifty store or something and get ice cream, So you started a bit of a trend with that, and you're still pushing the boundaries.
Well, and I think when it comes to sourcing and then of course the body and texture stuff, and then starting with raw milk. I mean, I think that's something that we've done that just wasn't done before we were there. I mean, there was, fun ice creams, but really everything was pretty much in the Ben and Jerry's model, before we started. And there were a few Boston ice cream makers, kind of more in the Italian, gelato sort of stuff. But
yeah, so it's really, I think you helped start a trend. You had a book. Tell us a little bit about that path.
Well, the Food and Wine in 2007 asked me for some ice cream recipes. And I had noticed that ice cream makers a lot of times will use a commercial recipe at work, but then fall back on like a standard egg yolk recipe for a book or for a recipe they give to a magazine. And I didn't want to do that. I thought that...
Why would they do that?
Well, just because they're so different. Making ice cream commercially or even in a restaurant often is so different from what you actually do at home. And a lot of times we're using egg yolks, a lot of times we're not using egg yolks, and it's not the same method anyway. And the machines never work. I mean, they never create this really great ice cream, that you're used to. And also I think people just didn't know how or didn't question it. It was like, well, if you do it at home, you have to do it like this. I mean, all of the ice cream books out there just seem like, and even ones from companies or chefs that I feel like wouldn't do it that way in their restaurant or in their facilities or whatever in their business. That's just what you end up with. It's just like the old recipe. It's like, 3 to 10 egg yolks and then this much sugar, this much milk, similar ratios. Or you get a Philadelphia style ice cream that's just cream and sugar and it's not cooked and it doesn't have any, so it's kind of icy, but it's not scoopable. You can't freeze it hard. And then scoop it hard. Like I think of American hard body ice cream, which is what I call what we do. And it has to be scoopable. And part of that is building elasticity and bonds between the molecules so that you can get some stretchiness so that when you're trying to, you got your little runway with your scoop, you can actually roll it together. And you don't want to melt it too much before you can do that. And so there's all of these things that go into that. So,
and can you predict that based on the recipe in a way, just your gut now?
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I have there's like an instinctive ratio thing that I have in my, that I get. Yes. But if just open up any ice cream book and they're all very, very similar. And so I thought that, and when Food and Wine called me in 2007, I thought, and I had also just had a baby. I was very bored, honestly. Like I was at home and I was just like, I had never just been at home, before. And I had this little baby and she was awesome, but not that fun. And I was just looking for a project, I think. And so I was like, all right, give me a couple months. And I wanted to create a new recipe at home that actually worked on home machines. And I wanted to base it on the science that I understood from being in our kitchens and working at dairies and working a little bit at Ohio State and the things that I had learned at Penn State when I went there. And I knew that I could get closer, So I started tackling it. And what I did is I worked backward from the flavor, texture, body, and finish that I wanted to achieve using the equipment that I had and the ingredients that were readily available to everyone. And just started working with those, and I figured it out, how to get as close as I could to actually our flavor, texture, and body and finish. And that we got the James Beard Award for that, actually, when it became a book. So Food and Wine published it in 2007. Then I got a book deal, did the book, and then in 2011 I got the James Beard Award.
And how did you?
It's a very different recipe. I mean, it's actually working with heat the same way that we do at Jenis, by denaturing the whey proteins, and you just do that by heat. And then I add a little tiny bit of cream cheese at the end because it gives it a little bit of body, and you can leave that out. But it's the heating part that really makes a huge difference in the texture of the ice cream and the scoopability of it. And
doesn't that hurt? Isn't that just like pasteurizing it twice? Because you had mentioned earlier you don't want to do that.
It's okay in the home recipe. It works great. I mean, it's a little bit like candying the milk. I mean, if you go a little bit further, you're going to get to like almost like a candied place, which you don't want to do. But because of how it is, and then without homogenizing at home, without being able to do that, it works great. It works really well. And we actually do it at home over a much higher temperature for a shorter period of time, and totally works. It works great.
So now you've helped everybody else make these great recipes in their homes and compete with you. And
Well, what we've done actually is and I wrote about this in the book, and I was hoping that it would happen, and it certainly did, and it was awesome, is inspire everybody to go tell their own stories through their ice cream. It's amazing. And they're doing it all over, and they tag me, and I see it every single day, on Instagram. People are starting businesses. People are just, children many of them are like not doing lemonade stands, but they're doing ice cream stands made out of ingredients grown in their neighborhood.
that's so cool.
I mean, it's really just amazing. Yeah. And I get all of the letters, and actually not just in America, but all over the world.
So what is it like to be an entrepreneur?
I'll answer that by saying the highs are extraordinarily high and amazing, and the lows can be very, very low. And there's not the middle is actually like boring for an entrepreneur. So it's weird. So you don't get a lot of it. You're either on that high or you're kind of in the low and trying to like work through it. And so being in the middle, I mean, if I spend too long in the sort of that middle ground between those two, I get restless and create trouble.
When was the last time you felt like, oh my God, I don't know if we're going to survive?
You know what? I mean, I really have been through that in a really big way. And I thought we actually wouldn't survive it 2 years ago when we had our recall. But the story of how we did was just so incredibly beautiful that I'm not afraid of that anymore. And I know that if you grow a company as a community, that your community comes out to support you. And it was wonderful. And I wouldn't wish that on my deepest enemy, but I actually think it's awesome for people to kind of go through that every once in a while. And then every day I wake up fighting because I don't think that anything is a given. And because of that, but also because when you're an entrepreneur, you don't think anything is sort of done. And I don't think there will ever be a time when I wake up and think, I don't have to do anything today or to fight for it. It's just not a part of who I am, or I think any entrepreneur I've ever met.
Tell us more about that recall. What was the process like? What happened?
Well, we found a pint of ice cream that actually tested positive for listeria. So we had to make this quick decision. What do we do? Do we try to work out where it came from, how much it's in, whatever, which could take weeks, months even. Or do we just rip off the Band-Aid and take it all back because it's ice cream and lots of people are eating it, and if it's dangerous, we don't want it out there. So that was exactly what we did. I think it took us about 4 hours to figure out that decision, and we did that. And then the clock started ticking. We recalled 265 tons of ice cream and sent it to an anaerobic digester. It was all of our summer production that had just been kickstarted, and all of our strawberries from the year before. And then this clock starts ticking. So we tried to figure out, and this is actually where we came up with our incredible sort of model of making ice cream, partly because other people were reaching out to us and asking us what we can do to help. So our dairy was like, what can we do? And we were like, well, actually, this is great because you're getting the milk in. Maybe like if we do this part and you do that part and you do that part, we can actually be better than we were when we were trying to just keep it all under our own umbrella. So we kind of spread it out and let others help us, and now we wouldn't go back.
So that's really where that kicked off.
Yeah, we call that the fellowship model, because when we were in this sort of trying time, it really did feel like Frodo, in the Lord of the Rings, or it was really like a Lord of the Rings reference. It was like people were coming in to help, and we were coming together and working through this to stay alive. And it was very cool. So we call it the fellowship model, that when we all work together, like we make this incredible ice cream. There was a community of people devoted to making the best ice cream the world has ever known.
Tell me about your 16-year-old self.
My 16-year-old self wanted to either design clothing or move to LA and do monster makeup and like makeup on Star Trek. I wanted to do makeup for like Next Generation. And I actually went to school early and decided like right after high school because I wanted to get into the school out here in LA. So funny, I might have been out here if I hadn't been doing all this stuff and I would have excelled at that. I can tell you. I know myself. I would have been a top monster makeup artist, latex or all of that here. And maybe I would have. I have an entrepreneurial spirit, so I probably would have my own company. But that was what I wanted to do at 16. I was very much. I worked when I was 16. I hated school. So I moved every year, almost growing up. I never had a friend really longer than a year, maybe two. But I had a sister, so she and I were very close, still are. And I just even now walking into a school gives me like a panic attack. I hated it. And I had luckily some really good teachers along the way, but caring and wonderful. And teachers are so, so important for that reason. But I didn't like sitting down in class. I am not a sitter. I like doing, even like how I learn is just by jumping in and doing. I love reading and all of that. And I love doing what I want to do. And I didn't like doing what people told me to do. I still don't. And my mother is like that too. So, so I don't know. I was ready to go. I was ready to be a grown up by the time I was 12. I was writing about that in my journal. I was just like, I wanted to work. So I worked when I was 16. I worked at a bakery. I worked as much as I possibly could. And it was great because it was all French speaking and I loved it deeply. And my manager there, Jody, was just out of the military and he was like, he just had such high standards. And I really loved that. I learned my work ethic from him and from working then. And I really wanted to please Jody and make sure that I did the best job there. It was great.
And what did you learn from that experience?
I mean, I learned that you put your name on it. I mean, really did. I learned that when I closed the bakery and the people come in the next morning and they're like blown away at how awesome it was, they remember that I did it, and I get a reputation for that.
What do you think your 16-year-old self would think about what you're doing now?
Honestly, I think that she would be like, of course. I think so because I've only done it my way ever. I mean, it's not to say that I haven't like learned from other people and involved a lot of other people in what I do, but I've only ever worked for myself and I made this. I built this world.
You have the entire state of Ohio working for you.
Once I got accused actually of buying all the strawberries in Ohio, and I felt really bad about that. and now we have our own strawberry fields, so that's good.
Who accused you of that?
Oh, like all the farmers, like all the people who shop at the farmers markets.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was kind of a little bit of a sort of what they were just an excuse they were making. But I got in a little bit of trouble from the shoppers. Like, we can't get strawberries this year because Jenis bought it all.
Really?
They're like, okay, now we gotta change this because we can't just keep buying from the farmers market at this point. We have to actually have these strawberries grown for us, especially so that we don't impact like this incredible moment. Now we have a festival of strawberries. When the strawberries come in, it's the kickoff of summer and what we think of as summer at Jenis. So we have something we call the Strawberry Jam, and we get bands out and celebrate that in Ohio.
Fun. There's 3 questions I ask everyone.
Okay.
In addition to the 16.
I'm always horrible at these things. My brain seizes up. So let's see.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can seize up your brain.
Okay. Probably.
Well, what's next? What's kind of the big thing that you're looking towards in the future?
Big thing. Well, Strawberry Jam's coming up, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Anything new kind of on the horizon?
Well, we're putting American flags on the top of our pints this summer, which I'm really excited about because I just feel like taking a little bit of America back, and I'm very, just feels really good to me. So I'm excited about that. We're doing a really great flavor for holiday. Believe it or not, I've already got holiday kind of almost done. And I'm really excited about that. In fact, I'm addicted to it. And I keep making it in the test kitchen just for me. Like, that's how good it is. And it's another one of those flavors that is shockingly simple.
Can you share?
No, I can't. I'm afraid somebody will take it from me.
No, I understand. When can you share? We'll have to share it with everyone once it's
in September.
Okay. What keeps you up at night these days?
Well, I mean, I actually think a lot about ice cream even while I'm asleep. I know that sounds crazy. I know it does.
Well, a lot of people do, right?
Yeah, but I do, and it's always about like, I really do dream about the texture and body of ice creams. It's really strange, and like just the other day, I was at our Larchmont store, which we're opening this week, and I was yesterday, I guess. And I was eating a cone of our genmaicha and marshmallows and then the orange blossom yogurt. And I was just blown away by the body and texture of the ice creams and the flavor and how it evolved or whatever. And like, that keeps me up. I'm like, okay, this is great. Sometimes it's not exactly like that. How do I keep it? How do I get it like this always? Because it's not just how we do it on the back end, which is so much a part of it. It's also what level it is at the dipping cabinet when you scoop it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because the top of each one of the ice cream buckets is warmer than the bottom. Mm-hmm. So these kinds of things, all of these tiny details, there are countless of them in ice cream, especially when you do it the way we do it. When we don't use those sort of, like staplers just make it easier to do. They even make it, scoop the same at the top and the bottom, where we don't have that. So anyway, so those kinds of things really do keep me up. I always say flavor gets me out of bed in the morning, but the texture and body keeps me up. Because it's like when you're working on a math problem, like it takes a lot of thinking. Mm-hmm. Whereas flavor, you almost don't want to think. You kind of let your it's more emotional. You kind of go with it.
How are you actually solving it, though? You're saying that it's keeping you up at night. You're trying to solve it. Haven't you already figured it out for the existing flavors? Or
there's just all of the there's yes, but there's so many more things we can do. Yeah, it's not finished.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. I have a lot more ideas.
Can't wait. So what's one thing you wish you had known that you'd want to share with other entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs?
That's a very difficult question because one thing I would say, I mean, man, it would have been great if somebody would have been like, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. Like it's going to be ups and downs or whatever. But like you'll be cool. But the thing is, if I had known that, I probably wouldn't have worked as hard. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't have fought as hard for it if I had just known that. In fact, no, none of us would. But that not knowing makes you fight harder, I think. And the real, as an entrepreneur, it's such an emotional thing and it's all very, very personal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's a hard thing. I just think you get on your board and you surf it and you just go and, get back up and just try it and go. Yeah.
Anything else I should have asked you?
Well, you didn't ask me about being a mother and doing all of this, which is awesome.
True.
Because most people, as a woman, will ask me about being a mother. And I think it's awesome that you didn't actually. I think that's wonderful. I mean, it's really wonderful. Like, they don't always ask. In fact, I've almost never heard anybody ask my husband about that or most of the men in my life about balance of being a mother and an entrepreneur. But and the answer is there is no balance. But yeah, it's all great. But
you just roll with it, huh?
Yep.
Well, I'm glad. So how can people buy your ice cream? That sounds a little bit like a silly question, but how do they reach you? How do they learn more?
Well, I'm easy to find. I'm all over, Instagram and the world. I mean, Jeni@Jenis.com is my email address, so that's easy. But Jenis.com is a great place to start, and all of our Jenis. Yes, in 7th grade, I changed the name of the spelling of my name because in my generation, everyone is Jenis. I mean, there are so many of us during those years that I had to stand out somehow. But it's Jenis.com. And then of course, if you're in a city that has a store, we would love to see you and we'll give you a taste of everything.
And it is really, really good. I am a fan. So, wow, it's a great story and it's pretty cool to see how you've been a real pioneer and taking the arrows in the back sometimes along the way.
It's all part of the fun.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I think the most interesting things I learned today were, first, the difficulty of perfecting gourmet ice cream flavors. I had no idea there were 4 basic facets to ice cream flavors. Flavor, of course, but also texture, body, and finish. And just adding flavoring to a base won't cut it. For example, fruit makes it icier, and chocolate makes it drier. There's a lot of science to the process. You need to understand pasteurization, denaturing of proteins, the caramelization process, and so on. And there's an art to getting it right. Also, it's fascinating how she's harnessed the entire state of Ohio to help make her product. The growers, dairies, service providers, they're all part of what she calls the fellowship model. It allows her to control the quality of all of the ingredients and to have strong relationships with her suppliers and to focus on what her company does best. And finally, and maybe most importantly, just get started. It's easy to want to perfect everything before you go to market, but it wasn't until Jeni started experimenting that she learned how to make things better, and her expertise comes from years and years of iterating and making mistakes. This actually reminds me of 2 other episodes. You might remember Greg Steltenpohl, the founder of Idwalla and Calafia Farms from season 1, and Rodney Mullen a couple episodes ago. Whether we're talking skateboards or juices, they both showed the value of having a maker mentality. By starting small, you can understand the process and improve it as you scale. I think the counterpoint to that lesson is how easy it is to compare ourselves as entrepreneurs to big success stories and get frustrated in the early stages. But as the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, says, to scale, you have to do things that don't scale. I always have to remind myself to take a step back and see how much I learned through the process of evolving an idea. Don't forget, every entrepreneur started at 0, and there's no shortcut to experience. By the way, Orange Blossom Buttermilk just came into season, so if you want to score your own pint, visit Jenis.com. That's Jenis.com. Thanks for joining us this week. If you're in LA next Wednesday, join me at the Make It Monthly event on Future Textiles, May 31st. For more information and to get invitations to future events by our partner Make It in LA, visit their website at makeitinla.org. Time to wrap it up for the Art of Manufacturing. Tune in next Thursday when we talk about the future of retail with Sonia Rasula, the founder of the Unique Empire. Unique has helped hundreds of makers reach customers and scale their businesses through their large-scale modern pop-up markets. Visit makeitinla.org for show notes and to stay in the loop about events, news, and resources. To chat with other like-minded manufacturing entrepreneurs, join our Facebook discussion group at makeitinla.org/community. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your favorite player. And if you like the show, do us a big favor and leave us a review. Or send us a message with feedback and ideas on Twitter at WeMakeItInLA. This podcast is produced by At Large and Dangerous in collaboration with the Make It in LA initiative and other partners. A big shout out to Peter Brandenburg, the producer and audio engineer, and our content coordinator, Heidi Carrion. This episode was recorded at the Reef in downtown Los Angeles. Thanks for listening to The Art of Manufacturing. I'm Z Holly, and remember, don't just make it, make it.